All right, welcome everybody to the final session of the Bookkeepers Year-End Bootcamp. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Hello and welcome if this is the first session that you're joining us for, and welcome back if this is the second or possibly even third session that you're joining us for at the bootcamp so far. Just while we wait for a few more people to trickle in, I can see plenty of people arriving on time already. Just do me a quick favor and go to the chat and just let me know whereabouts you're joining from. Myself, I'm based here in the UK, so it's slightly later for me now. It's just turned 9 p.m. We've got Peter on the line here, who's going to be delivering a session for you shortly, who's based in Australia. So it's a nice early morning for Peter over there. But if you can just let me know in the chat whereabouts you're joining from, that would be really great. And this is also a great geography lesson for myself to brush up on my US states. So I can see Florida, Mississippi, Greenville, Omaha, Washington. A couple of places I've never heard of. This is really enlightening. Seattle, Delaware. Got somebody from Portugal. Welcome. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. So just before we get started, I've got a few housekeeping rules to share with you. If you haven't already done so, please remember to mute your phone, close your emails, lock your door, and most importantly, focus. You've taken the time kindly to be out of your busy schedule to be with us today. And I really hope that you can get the most out of the time that you have with Peter during this session. Please, if you have any questions as we're going through this session, use the Q&A box. It's located just at the bottom of Zoom. It says Q&A. If you've got any specific questions, please drop them in there. And that's just going to help us to keep track of those as they get asked. But equally, feel free to use the chat box to talk amongst yourselves. We've had some really great conversation going in the chat in the previous two sessions. It's really nice to see lots of you helping and supporting each other and sharing ideas in there. Just remember to change who you're sending the chat to from hosts and panelists and change it to everybody. And then that way, any chat messages will get seen by everybody in the session. And last but not least, remember to get social. I've seen lots of posts so far on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram using the hashtag year-end bootcamp. I'd love to see some more. Please feel free to tag us in any social media posts on all of those platforms. So we've had two great sessions so far. We kicked things off with Gabrielle Fontaine talking about 1099 preparation, how you can streamline that process. And we've just come off another great session with Jenny Moore from Practice Ignition, talking about accelerating cash flow and scaling your firm into 2022. So in just a second, I'm going to hand over to Peter, who's going to close the bootcamp for us today. And he's going to be sharing with you the 5 most important systems in a bookkeeping business. But before we hand things over, I just want to give you a very quick reminder about the opportunity today to win some VIP passes worth $149 to the Successful Bookkeeping Summit. So I'm really pleased to be partnering with Pure Bookkeeping, and Peter's representing Pure Bookkeeping this session today as a co-founder. And they're organizing a summit in December, and it's got some really great speakers and sessions. And they've got some VIP tickets up for grabs. And these VIP tickets will allow you to get instant access to all of the recordings from their summit, as well as an exclusive 2022 planning workshop that they're organizing. So if you want to be in with the chance to win one of these tickets, then all you need to do is stay till the end of the session. I'm sure you're going to have no trouble doing that with the content that Peter's got lined up for you. But if you want to get some additional entries as well to win VIP passes, then go to your social media platforms and share a post using the hashtag year-end bootcamp. And remember to tag Use Pixie, and we'll count those as additional entries towards the VIP passes as well. That's my introduction out of the way, Peter. So I'm going to hand things over to you now. And Peter's going to share with you the 5 most important systems in a bookkeeping business.
Thank you very much. Give me a thumbs up if you're hearing me. I'm assuming that's a yes. And welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. Hope you cope okay with my Australian accent. And it's one of my challenges when I travel to the US, and I notice most people here in America is dealing with my accent. The very first time I landed in America, which is a fair way away, a 24-hour flight, and I was only 21 and going to college in Champaign-Urbana in Illinois. And because it was my first time out of the country on my own, my mum had found a friend of a friend to pick me up at the airport, and she took me into Chicago and took me out for a drink. And my first interaction with a real American, I went to the bar and said, "Can I have 2 beers, please?" And the guy behind the bar looked at me and said, "Say again." Like, "2 beers, please." He's like, "Sorry, we don't 2 Bs? No, 2 beers. Sorry, I don't think we have that." I'm like, I can see 30 of them lined up behind you. Anyway, oh, "You mean beer?" And that was that was a continuing theme for my year in America. So apologies in advance if I am struggling to be understood. So what we're going to talk, let me just jump across into my slides. Where are we here? So there we go. Your 5 most important systems. And I'm going to get there in a little bit. But first, just wanted to say a little bit about why me. Why have Pixie kindly invited me to talk about systems in a bookkeeping business. So this story goes back a little bit, and I won't tell the whole story, but I'm going to go back in time a little bit to when I started working in this industry. So I want you to guess the year. So in the chat, so Josh is having trouble with the volume. Mala's says I'm doing great. I'm understanding just fine. No, I haven't started yet for guessing the year. Wait, not yet. I just want to check. Can people, Josh is having trouble hearing me. Is anyone else having trouble, or is that just a Josh issue? Okay, perfect. Josh, I think that's your end. So guess the year when this is what telephones look like. This is what computers look like. And this is what a cloud was. Yes, 1998, 1997, 95, 97. A little bit later, 2000, 2001. And who was that? Brittany, the Chockies go to Brittany. This was 2001. And I started working with this woman, Debbie Roberts. So I was a business coach back then. I had just started. I was young enough to still think I knew everything and knew enough to be able to give advice on business, even though I'd barely started myself with the arrogance and ignorance of youth. But one thing, and Debbie was running a bookkeeping business, and she came to me and said she was full, so she had a full set of books. She had more people coming to her asking for help, and she wanted to grow, but she didn't know how to grow, didn't know how she could hire somebody else into her business, how she could trust somebody else with her clients, essentially. And she'd been cleaning up lots of messes left behind by bad bookkeepers, and kind of didn't see how she could possibly get past that. I don't know. Give me a little thumbs up in the chat if that sounds familiar, that experience of seeing cleaning up messes that have been left behind and experiencing problems with bookkeeping done badly. And far too often, yes. And what I said to her was, if we could take what was in your head and put it on paper, the system that you use to do the bookkeeping, and have somebody else follow that, do you think then you could trust somebody else to do your bookkeeping? And she said, yeah, it's worth having a crack. And so I gave her a copy of the E-Myth Bookkeeper, not the E-Myth Bookkeeper, of the E-Myth by Michael Gerber, which is the best-selling small business book of all time, apparently, sold 5 million copies or something incredible, which essentially says how to create systems, create systems in a small business. The book was the E-Myth Bookkeeper. The E-Myth Revisited. So okay, I'll put that the E-Myth. So the Entrepreneurial Myth. Oh yeah, thank you, Jordan. You're there ahead of me. Give me a thumbs up if you've actually read that or come across that in your travels. And that's talking about. So essentially, I coached Debbie for pretty much the next decade, helping her build the systems in her business. The systems for how to do the bookkeeping, how to do the sales and marketing. And then 10 years later, she had, I think, the best systems in the industry. And I said, we had a conversation about, now she had 12 bookkeepers in her business. The business didn't need her. She was only working a day a week in the business. And I said, let's take some of what we've learned and help other bookkeepers grow their business. And so we did that. We launched in 2010, launched Pure Bookkeeping with the mission of transforming the bookkeeping industry by helping great bookkeepers grow their businesses. And we've been doing that now 11 years. Started in Australia. Obviously, we're also now in Canada and the US. And have done a whole bunch of stuff to help great bookkeepers grow their business. We also had the amazing honour of being invited by Michael Gerber to write the version of the E-Myth for bookkeepers. That came out a few years ago, and that was a huge honour. Yes, and there's some people who have that on the original E-Myth on their book wish list on Amazon. That's good, and lots of thumbs up. Great book. And your last boss was a huge E-Myth fan. Very cool, Jenny. So that's me. That's how come I'm here talking about systems, and why I was invited to do that. And now I'm in front. Let me just move myself. Look at that. So I want to touch on the bookkeeping business journey that we're all on, and then going to go through some of the mistakes that we see. So in industry for 20 years and working with like thousands of bookkeepers over the last decade, what are some of the common mistakes? And I'll give you a chance to work out which one you reckon you're most at risk with, or not mistakes, sorry, the challenges. Like, what's the challenge? What's your biggest challenge? Then touch on systems, how I think about systems in a bookkeeping business, and which are the 5 promise that are the most important. And then very briefly, I'll touch on the pure bookkeeping system and what you can do if you want to check that out and work with us, and have time for questions, as well as questions throughout. So feel free to put a question in the Q&A at any time, or put something in the chat, and I'll try and keep an eye on those. I've got my camera here, and I've got the chat sitting over there. So if you see me glancing over there, that's what I'm doing. So the bookkeeping business journey, and I think of this, as you can see, in terms of profit, which is how much money you take out of the business, whether you call it profit or salary or drawings, and leverage. And leverage in a bookkeeping business is typically through having other people in the business, having a team who is doing the bookkeeping and looking after your clients. And the beginning is what we call the startup phase, where obviously there's no leverage, it's just you. And when you're just starting out, there's not a lot of profit. And what we want to do is move up that profit line when it's still you, to get to what we talk about as a successful practice. And this should be turning over around $100,000. If you're full up on your own, charging properly, that's our benchmark for a successful practice. And some people stop there, go, this is great. This is where Debbie was when I met her. And then people who also say, okay, actually, I want to grow. And the interesting thing that happens in the next phase, the transition for business, is the leverage grows. So you now have 2, 3, 4 bookkeepers. But what we often see is then the profit drops. And especially where you don't have good systems for the bookkeepers to follow, there's this risk where you'll have 2 or 3 other bookkeepers in the business. You're looking after your own clients. You're then checking their work. You're working way harder than you were on your own and actually making less money. And we want to get through that dip as quickly as possible to get to a successful business. And this is where you're turning over 300,000 to $1 million plus, taking home 150 to 400,000 of that, and with an asset you can sell, is the word that I'm hiding behind my head there. So that's the journey that we see bookkeeping businesses go on. What I would love is, if you're going to have to concentrate here, because this is not I should have put the numbers here on the model, but if you can imagine, a 1 is right at the bottom of startup, going up to 5 as a successful practice, like you're full up that would be 5, $100,000. Then 6 would be you've just transitioned to business. So you've hired your first bookkeeper. Up to a 10 is a successful business. So give me a number from 1 to 10 in the chat. Perfect. Oh, congratulations. A few 6s and 7s, a few people just hired, and 9. I love that. That's very cool. Lots of 1s. That's awesome. Congratulations, everybody who has just started. We've even got a 0 there from someone who still needs to get their first client. An 8. Congratulations, Mike. That's awesome. Moving up on the right-hand side. That's a really good mix. 10, Kathy. Awesome. And Meredith is a 12 out of 10. Off the charts. Fabulous. Thank you. Now, where do you want to go? So what is what's your vision? Where in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years do you want to be? 10, something you can sell. Awesome. It might be a 5. Awesome page. That's perfect. That you want to have retired. Nice. A few people. 7, they want to grow a business, but not to a team of 12. Maybe that looks like 5 people. 10 plus, saleable, awesome, good stuff. Very cool. A solid 11. That reminds me of what's the movie that's where the volume turns up to 11? Someone who can remember that movie, put it in the chat where he wants the amp to go up to 11. Spinal Tap. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, a few fans there. Beautiful. So let's, going for time very well. Let's have a look at the challenges that we see bookkeepers facing. I'm going to move myself back out of the way there. So these are, as I said, have worked like with direct clients with hundreds and hundreds of people using our system in Australia and hundreds in North America, and then thousands of bookkeepers who have been through our seminars and other stuff. So we've got exposed to lots and lots of bookkeepers over the last decade. And I think if there's a theme for these challenges, it would be that we're trained as bookkeepers. Most of us going into the industry have experience as bookkeepers. We know how to do bookkeeping really well, but then suddenly we're now running a business, and that's a whole different thing. And we have to do marketing and sales and management and recruitment. And we haven't been trained in that, and we haven't got experience in that. And so the whole business side of the bookkeeping business can be challenging. And what I want you to track out is which of these is your biggest challenge. So we're going to go through the 7, and I'm going to check in at the end and go, what's your biggest challenge out of these 7? And we'll put that in the chat. So the first one is marketing. And what we hear is things like, to be honest, I don't really do any active marketing. I just do a good job and hope more clients show up. And I think lots of bookkeepers who are technicians, who are great bookkeepers, see marketing as something that's very, very different to the normal skill set. And we see a lot of bookkeepers who just actually don't do marketing. Or I just wish someone else could do the marketing and I could just do the bookkeeping. The first challenge is marketing. Sales. So how I think about marketing compared to sales is marketing is what attracts a prospect, and sales is how we convert a prospect into a customer. So we hear things like, I don't really know what I'm worth. I think I should charge more, but I don't know how. And I don't like talking about money. This was definitely Debbie when I started working with her. I don't really have a good structure for my sales conversation. It's just a bit of a chat. We have people who don't even know what they're going to charge. It kind of depends how the conversation goes, which is part of that. Kimberly does word of mouth marketing. I think that is Elizabeth. B&I mainly. Yeah, referrals definitely the best type of marketing. And B&I was actually how I met Debbie. So we were both in a B&I chapter, and that was how we met, which is Business Network International, I think. So systems is the third challenge. I have a certain way of doing things, but it's not documented anywhere. Or I know having good systems is the key to growing my business, and I've made a start, but I just don't have the time. recruiting. I've cleaned up messes left behind by bad bookkeepers. Don't know if I could trust anyone else to look after my business. So saying this is what Debbie, the main challenge that Debbie came to me with. I've tried putting on another bookkeeper once and it was a disaster. And anyway, my clients all love me. So that's one of the transition challenges going from just you to other bookkeepers is how do you explain how do you give your clients the assurance that having someone else do the bookkeeping will be just as good as having you do it, and how do you maintain that relationship? Management. Becoming harder and harder to keep up with the changes in the bookkeeping industry, new legislation, even keeping on top of my professional development hours. Got lots of experience and skills bookkeeping, but I've never studied business, and this is my first time running a business. So it's a very different thing managing a business and all the domains of a business than doing the bookkeeping. Confidence. To be honest, my biggest challenge is my lack of self-confidence. I can see how other people can have a successful bookkeeping business, but I don't quite believe it's possible for me. So this is one of the things that probably people don't share in the first conversation. But when we're working with people, this is one of the things that, that's a common thread of, how do you have the confidence to say, this is what I do, this is how much it costs to deal with all of the stuff that goes with running a business before you've done it. And finally, commitment. I'm not that committed to growing my business. It's more of a hobby to me. I'm retiring in a few years and just looking to keep my business until then. So I'd imagine on this call that that's not that common. Like if commitment was your biggest challenge, you probably wouldn't be on a call or on this boot camp looking to grow your business. So what I would love to hear is, what is your one, or if you want to overachieve, you can put in a few more. I think that's a really good insight, Julia, that 2 and 6 go hand in hand, in my opinion. So yeah, I completely agree. So 1 being marketing, 6 being confidence, that what we want to do, and this is, we talk about systems being the key to this, is we want to have some systems around how you do the marketing so it doesn't rely on your confidence. And then so it's not about, if you can follow a system that doesn't need you to be kind of up, then that actually gives you the confidence. So Josh is a 6 as well. Marketing and confidence. Marketing, sales and marketing, 1 to 5. Sales, yep. Yeah, fabulous. Systems, recruiting, also systems. Very active group. Thank you, everybody. Cool. 1 to 5 and systems. So these are all challenges that we face first in Deb's business. And what we tried to do every time was come up with a system to solve the challenge. So creating a system for how do you do sales so that it happens the same way every time. A system for how do you do the bookkeeping, obviously. A system for how do you recruit bookkeepers. And what happened is all these systems kind of kept increasing the confidence, and it meant the problem was solved permanently in the business, not temporarily through some insight. Will we get the recording of these webinars? That is a great question. I'm not sure, to be honest. Jordan might give us an answer to that. Thank you, Jordan. Yes, we do. Absolutely, we do. Of course. So how I think about systems is, like an aeroplane. So my brother-in-law is a Emirates pilot, which is fabulous for us traveling because we get a family discount whenever we travel around the world in Emirates. I get 50% off. My wife gets 90% off. So being Vincho's brother, she pays 10%, which is crazy. Yes, although not that we've been flying very much lately. And this is an A380. So this is an Emirates A380. This is not actually my brother-in-law in the picture, but it is an Emirates A380. And Vincho, my brother-in-law, used to fly an A380, and then he switched to a Boeing 747. So from an Airbus A380 to a Boeing 747. So firstly, he's trained as a pilot. He knows how to, you can put him in a kind of a little plane. He knows how to fly a plane. He knows how to take off and land. But a 747 is a very different plane than a A380. So he has a procedure, like a manual for this is how you fly a 747. This is how you take off. This is how you land. This is how all the gauges work. This is how the whole thing. And so you go through this whole training process, and then you can read a system, read a procedure for how to take off. And then you also have a checklist. So you study the system, you study the procedure, and then you have a checklist to remind yourself of what are all the steps. So if you're going to take off, there's a pre-flight checklist, and you learn how to do it in the procedure, and then you just tick it off when you're actually doing it. And so the metaphor of this for a bookkeeping business is you already know, you're a bookkeeper, you already know how to do double entry bookkeeping. You've been trained how to do bookkeeping. You then would have a process for how you do it in the particular software that you use, whether that's QBO or Xero or whatever is a software. You have a process for how do we do the bookkeeping in that particular system. And then you have a checklist that you would give to your bookkeepers, or ideally you'd use yourself, so that you wouldn't miss anything. So if I'm doing a month-end reconciliation, here are all the steps, and you tick them all off. And then you have, but if you're showing someone how to do it, you show, here's the system for how do you do that particular process in your business, and here's the checklist for it. And then Linda says, this comes back to your question, Linda, which is, does Pure Bookkeeping recommend Pixie and have templates and user manuals to integrate? I currently use ClickUp with all the issues going on with their programmers. So Linda, absolutely, we recommend Pixie. And how that, in this metaphor, how that works is the checklists all live in Pixie. And we're currently getting that integrated even more tightly. But what happens is we have the Pure Bookkeeping checklists in Pixie, and then we have the Pure Bookkeeping Central, we have the process. So you can read the whole process if you need to check on it, but then every time you do it, you just tick it all off for each client, for each job in Pixie, and then you can know that everything's got done, nothing's got missed, everything's reconciled, etc. So this is how I think about systems. I had the pleasure to interview James Clear, who's written one of the best-selling books on habits, probably the best-selling book on habits, actually. It's over 2 million now. He's recently told me he's passed 2 million. And the quote I like from there, which is, he's talking about life, but I think it applies to business too, is you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Yeah, it's a very, very cool book. People who are adding to their Amazon wish list, this is another good one to put on it. It's in my Kindle, this is my most highlighted book. So out of all the books in my Kindle, this is the one that has the most highlights. A couple of people who love that book too. Beautiful. We're traveling very, very well, I think. So that's how I think about systems in a business. Let's talk about the 5 most important systems. So this is, if you're thinking about systemizing your business, this is how we structure it. I don't know if I'm in my office downstairs and it's time to be going to school, and I can hear my 5-year-old crying upstairs. So I've got my wife coming. Oh, and actually have, we have, here is my eldest daughter. You can't see them, but there's about 200 and something people, mostly in America, who are watching this at the moment. So I probably better get back to that. See you later. Love you. Excuse me there. My yeah, she's lovely. That's my daughter Scarlett. And this is, yes, there's a little, I think there's a challenge with daughter number 2. Sounds from what I can hear is upset. I'm not sure if the microphone's picking up the crying, but I've been hearing crying upstairs for the last 5 minutes while my wife's trying to get everyone off to school. So back to children are a blessing. Yes, thank you. So the first system is around the actual bookkeeping. So particularly when you have a team of bookkeepers, what's critical is that everybody on the team does the bookkeeping the same way. So you can have a room of 12 bookkeepers and the same job would get 12 different ways, and they could all be correct. But what you need is to be able to say to your client, whichever one of our team does this, it's going to be the same. And also, like, for you actually to do it the same, if you have the system out of your, even if it's just you, if it's not just in your head, but you can actually document it, it makes things much easier for you. If you have checklists you follow for every bookkeeping job, then you're not trying to remember, how do we do this thing? What's the best way to do this? And it's not changing each time. And what we've developed in the pure bookkeeping system is bookkeeping manuals, which, when it used to be, so this was, obviously we started this project 20 years ago. It was paper-based for 15 years and it's now in the cloud. But when it was printed, the bookkeeping manual was 500 pages for a particular software package. So the QBO bookkeeping manual, well, it wasn't QuickBooks Online, obviously, back then. The first one we did in Australia was a package called MYOB here, and then Xero, and then Quicken before it was QBO, now QuickBooks Online. But that was 500 pages for how do you do best practice bookkeeping in this particular software system. And if you're going to pick one to start, one process in the bookkeeping to start, I'd do the month end. So what happens at the end of the month to get everything reconciled? I loved MYOV. Yes, a little blast from the past there. So the first part of your business is systemised, and the first system that generally gets created is around the bookkeeping. And ideally, for all the people who were kind of 1s and 2s and just getting started, it's better if you have this in place before you hire bookkeepers. So it's the perfect time to get bookkeeping systems integrated into your business is when you're starting. What normally happens is, because it feels like you don't need it as much when it's just you, is you get full. Suddenly you're working 40 hours a week doing bookkeeping. You're trying to hire someone else. You're trying to recruit. That's when you need the systems, and that's when that's the last thing you could do is actually create them. Second one is marketing, and we talked about this. This was, I think, probably the most common challenge, and it feels, our perception of what makes a good marketer feels like it's very different from what a bookkeeper is. And I know that we often, like, we can think marketing is about being extroverted and big and out loud and out there. And lots of people generally, definitely me, but lots of people in the world and in our industry don't feel like that. And so marketing feels very challenging. And so what we want is, what are some systems that we can just follow step by step for how to go about attracting clients? I think we talked, there was some comments about word of mouth marketing, and referrals are definitely the best kind of marketing. But what we want is systems for how do we get referrals. So rather than just saying, okay, I want to get referrals, I hope I do, actually have systems that help get referrals. So one of those that that Debbie has that's in the pure bookkeeping system is in the engagement letter. We have an agreement that says, here are all the things that we commit to, here are all the things that you commit to. And one of the things, and this gets signed, it's kind of like how their relationship works and gets signed by both parties at the start. And one of the things is, if you're happy, you'll refer at least one other person to our business, or you'll consider referring at least one other person to our business. And it's a very small thing and nobody questions it and everyone read it through and it's fine. But it means we've already set that expectation that this is how that relationship works. And then you have a system for when you do your check-in. So you have a relationship check-in and that's part of the system that's every 6 months or depending how often you see them, you just kind of step back and go, how are we going? That's the time to say, do you know anybody else who needs a good bookkeeper? And just having those little drips that are systematized rather than trying to remember or hoping you do it means that it happens ongoingly. We also have systems for how do you create a website? How do you talk to an accountant? How do you meet with an accountant of an existing client to get more referrals? And so on. We actually have 7 different marketing strategies, but what we want is systems for all of those. So you just follow the bouncing ball. So it's really easy. And you go, okay, this is what I do. This is what I say. This is what I send. And it's just a process to follow, not I have to be a whole different way. Give me a little thumbs up or a nod if that makes sense. The idea of having a system around your marketing that is a process to follow rather than having to be a different way, that you just be yourself and follow the bouncing ball rather than going, all right, now I have to wake up in some whole other different, Cool, thank you. Appreciate that. It's one of the challenges talking to a screen, not to a room of people is sometimes nice to check in how it's landing. Sales is the next one. So this was an interesting one. So what good sales looks like is you've got conviction about how this works and really clear about what it is, who you work with, what it costs, and it's effective. So that means that a good percentage of the people you talk to will end up working with you and at the right price. And what a professional doing sales looks like is you're in charge of the process. You don't want to hand it over to them. And it's the same when you go and see a professional, you want them to be in charge, because what that message gives is you're a professional. You know how this works. You've got it. And then I can relax. I go, okay, this professional is in charge and understand and knows exactly what's going to happen, and I can just relax. A good example of this was when we were doing IVF. So both our little girls are IVF babies, and it took us a while to have children. And I remember for Trish wanted to use someone else for the second time. So we went and visited this doctor when we were trying to have our second child. And I remember walking in and his receptionist put us into his office before, like he wasn't there yet. So we sat opposite and I could see his computer and he had a Ferrari screensaver. I was like, uh-oh. And then he walked in and he had a tie with a Ferrari label on it. And I'm like, oh, this is not a cheap process. This is not looking like it's not a lot of money here. And then he talked through the whole process, how it was going to work, what was going to happen. He said, all right, we should start off doing a pap smear. Let's do that. Trish, do you want to just step behind this curtain? And I was like, wow, we're doing this. Price hasn't even been mentioned, but we're in. And there was complete conviction. So he ran the whole thing. There was no, well, this is what I want. This is how much does it cost? There was no negotiation. There was nothing. It was like, yep, this is how it all works. and then on the way out, talk to the receptionist, and she'll fix up the accounts. And I walked away going, wow, that's a really good sales process. And he was great, and obviously it worked, and it was expensive. And what you want is how we've set this up is a presentation, like a slide deck that Debbie can go through, and then pure bookkeepers can go through to say, okay, these are, so you sit down with someone and you actually go through the slide deck and say, here are the problems business owners face with small businesses with bookkeeping. Here is the challenges. This is what that can mean for you. Here are the benefits of bookkeeping doing well. Here's the process that we follow. Here's what it costs. Here's what's next. And it took it from being a conversation that was kind of meandering and hit and miss to a really effective process to get effective sales. Recruiting is another key system. This is our fourth one. And the main thing we found with recruiting is that you want to test bookkeepers doing bookkeeping rather than checking credentials and qualifications. And so we got this wrong a lot. So in Debbie's business, we got the marketing and sales right, and we had referrals coming in and accountants sending us business, and networking was working. But we were hiring some great bookkeepers, but some bookkeepers not so great. And then we would have to let them go. And it was this really painful process because you're full up, you finally get some relief, you can put a bunch of clients here, and then suddenly that doesn't work and you have to apologize and you have to take them back, and then it's much harder the next time. And what we ended up doing was creating a little, like a 90-minute bookkeeping job that was originally in MYOB, now in all the platforms, where we could sit a bookkeeper down and say, here's the file, here's the dummy file, here's invoices and reconciliations and receipts, here's the job, go for it. And then at the end of 90 minutes, they've finished, they need to ask them, like there's bits missing. We said, if you've got any questions, ask, because that's what a bookkeeping job's like. And then at the end, we can score them out of 100. And if they get less than 80, then they don't go on to an interview. And we actually found that more than half of the bookkeepers that do this test don't pass it. And often they're people that we would have hired. So that's in the whole of HR, I think that skills test is the key recruiting system that you want to build. And the final one is pricing. Debbie and lots of bookkeepers are kind of uncomfortable putting up prices. And so what we've done is created a system where every year there's an annual price increase, and we have a letter and a system for that goes, this is what's happening next year, here's our schedule of fees. And yeah, I think that's a key system to have, is some way of making sure your pricing keeps increasing, like at least with CPI plus a little bit. And the question here is, do accountants and CPAs really outsource to bookkeeping professionals? Josh, yeah, absolutely. That was not all of them. There are some CPAs who do it in-house, lots who will outsource it. But it's not the place to get your first client. So the best way to get referrals from an accountant is to already be doing the bookkeeping for one of their clients, and then have a meeting with them about that client and then about their other clients. So referrals from accountants is one of our 7 marketing strategies. And we would say typically start with with ones that are a bit higher up. Very cool. So there are our 5 key systems. I hope that is useful. I'm going to touch on the pure bookkeeping system, as I promised, and then open up for any questions about anything that we've talked about. So I could very happily talk for another hour about the pure bookkeeping system. I'm not going to do that. I'll touch on it quickly, and you can find out more about that. We'll send a link about how you can do that. So this includes bookkeeping manuals, which is the 500 pages, but now all in the cloud and not paper-based, for the different software systems. sales and marketing manual. So this is exactly what we've just been talking about. Is I think what the bookkeeping manuals do is help you do best practice bookkeeping and give you confidence that your bookkeeping is impeccable. And where more importantly is has your whole team do the bookkeeping the same way. The sales and marketing manual is it makes it look like you've been around for 10 years. So even if you're just starting out, like when you have all these presentations and engagement letters and website content, it looks like you've been, like you add, it's kind of like you take our 10 years of development and you start at that point. And it gives you the confidence to go, okay, you look and feel different. And then it has exactly what we're talking about, like the step-by-step, how do you sit down and have a sales meeting? What do you do when a client calls? What's the script for that conversation when you get a referral? How do you ask for a referral, et cetera, et cetera. There's lots and lots now of different add-ons and apps that we're writing that each time our community says, oh, we're using this particular app or software, and if there's enough of a demand, we'll go, okay, we'll write a process for that, for how to do that best practice and how to integrate it with the rest of our system. And we have Pure Bookkeeping Central, which is our community hub where the community lives. And one of the things we're really happy about and we've really focused on is creating a supportive community. And we've really done that. There's a lot of love and help for each other in the community. It's not competitive. It's very kind of lifting everybody up. Unlimited support. So part of what you get as a licensee or as a member is unlimited support to implement the system. It's not business coaching, but anything that you need to help implement any of the procedures around the bookkeeping or the sales and marketing or the recruiting, we're always on the other end of the phone. You get an initial strategy call to set that up and kind of walk you through the induction. And the other thing that happens is we update the systems. We have a team of people who are constantly updating the system as software changes and legislation changes. So one of the challenges is even if you create all these systems yourself, it's almost a full-time job to keep them up to date. So that's very, very quickly what it is. It's $4.95 a month to access the system. We have two pretty cool guarantees. One is you've got 45 days to make sure it's as good as we say it is, to make sure that you love it, to give it a full road test. And for any reason at all that you don't love it, get a full refund, no questions asked within 45 days. So pretty low risk to check it out. The other guarantee, and this is the one I really love, I guess I came up with it, so I probably should love it, we've had this since we started, is that if you implement it, it'll pay for itself at least twice. So it's designed to add six figures to your business. So really it should get you from 0 to 100,000 within a year, or if you're looking to grow, add another 100,000 to your business within a year. That's the aim of it. But the guarantee is that not just it'll pay for itself, but it'll pay for itself twice. So if 12 months, you pay $4.95 a month, that's $6,000. So it'll add at least 12 grand to your business. And if not, we'll refund the difference. And there's, in Australia at least, I should check with Michael, but in Australia, we've had coming up to 1,000 licensees. And I think 3 times we've had people take up that guarantee. So we're pretty confident that this works, and the numbers back that up pretty substantially. As I said, you have to actually implement it. So we give you a lot of help to implement it. You can't ring up in a year and say, I haven't logged in yet and it didn't work. But we're pretty confident if you have a crack at this, it works. And we have a special offer as part of the Bootcamp where you can save $1,200 over the next 12 months. So that would be $3.95 a month for the first 12 months. And how you can take advantage of that is if you just go there. Jordan, do you want to do me a favor and maybe stick that into the chat, that link? If you go there, you'll get prompted to give some details, and then you'll get sent a code which will give you that discount. And doing that, there is no obligation. You can go in, put in your details, get the code, and use that to have a look. Thank you very, very much, Jordan. So the price again is normally $4.95 a month, and with a special offer, $3.95 a month for 12 months. So take a moment, if you've got a pen and paper or just somewhere on your screen, to write down, if I happen to just drop by and say, I'd love a coffee, is there anything you want to know? What would you want to ask me? So I've been, as I said, been in this industry for a long time, been helping lots and lots of bookkeepers grow their businesses. Also got 2 young kids, so if there's any parenting stuff you'd want to know, or anything about Australia, the complete open slather. If maybe we have 10 minutes, and any questions would be either in the chat or in the Q&A. We have Lloyd Detta. Apologies if I'm not saying your name correctly. What platform can the testing be created for recruiting? So we have that done for QBO and Xero, I think, in North America. And so that's already set up for those 2 platforms. Yeah, so here's some very, very good questions coming through. This is an interesting question. How often do you see a successful bringing in a partner to a firm? Yeah. So this is a standard model in accounting firms, and it's a standard progression. And so the model's there, and the model works really well. Haven't seen it used as much for bookkeepers, and I think that's typically because bookkeepers don't grow to the same size. And often the people who you engage as bookkeepers are working for you because they like the bookkeeping, not the whole business. So if you were going to engage somebody, it would be, I think, and bring them in as a partner, they would need to be across the whole business, and have seen that done well. More often see partnerships, status partnerships, rather than bringing in a partner. How do you review a bookkeeper's work? So ideally, what normally happens is the principal of the firm will go into the actual file and have a look at what's done. What we want to do is have the quality control be in the system, not with you. So there should be, as part of the checklist that the bookkeeper does at the end of every session, there is everything that got done and also all the reconciliations. So what Debbie would normally do with a new bookkeeper is, with every bookkeeper, either Debbie or ended up being her head of production, would check the checklist and the report that got generated. And the first couple of times with a new bookkeeper, they would go in and actually look at what's happened and make sure that it matched up. But then you want it to be done by the system. What advice do you have for someone who has been on the cusp of huge growth but can't quite get there? That's a really, really good question, Jill. Someone... Yeah, this sounds a little esoteric. I would take some time getting clear on what you want, and whether it is huge growth or whether it's more perhaps sustainable growth. Huge growth and quick growth can be a trap and can be painful. And I've seen a lot of businesses, not just in this industry, a lot of businesses grow too quickly, too fast, and implode. So I'm more interested in sustainable growth than huge growth, and have that be steady and be in the context of what you want for your whole life. So I don't know if that's a useful answer or not, but that's how I think about huge growth and normal growth, or more geometric growth. Do I recommend niching versus general bookkeeping for someone who's trying to start their bookkeeping business? That's another good question. Really good questions. Good group we have here. So I'd say 95% of bookkeepers are generalists. They don't have a niche. And I think having a niche is, particularly if there's a group that it makes sense to do that with, is a really smart thing to do. And one of my mantras is market narrowly, deliver broadly. So it's much easier to market as the bookkeeper for physiotherapists and then deliver to anybody than just as, because then you know how to find physiotherapists. If you actually can kind of get their industry, and I'm a physio, then there's a reason that I would listen to you, and it feels like you're talking to me, rather than a bookkeeper like any other bookkeeper. So love the idea of niching if it makes sense, and leaving open the possibility to still do anybody else. So any ideas for new bookkeepers to make good impressions on CPAs to make a referral partner out of them? That's another great question. So what we found is that you're not going to get in front of an accountant unless you have a shared client. So we tried lots and lots of ways to get in front of accountants, calling, sending letters, sending brochures. We did lots of stuff, none of which worked. But what's worked every time is calling an accountant and saying, hi, it's Debbie here. We have a shared client, Bill, and I want to have a conversation about how do you want the bookkeeping done? How do you like the year end done? What are the challenges? Like, let's talk about how to look after this client together. The accountant will take that meeting every time. And then Debbie developed, or together we developed, a presentation to give the accountant that's similar to the one for a new client, but it says in an actual deck that we would do on an iPad or a laptop, or flick through and say, here are the challenges accountants face with bad bookkeeping. Here's the process that we use. Here are how we hire bookkeepers. Here's the system that they all use. Here are the benefits of that. And we had a specific preferred agreement. How easy is it to sell a bookkeeping business? I think that's similar to, so we sold Debbie's business. There's kind of two places where it's easier to sell. Like if it's just a full set of books that it's just you, here are all the clients, you can sell that and people kind of know how to take that over, but it's at a reduced, it's not dollar for dollar, it's like at a reduced ratio because that person has to do all the work. Or it needs to be at a point where it's not reliant on you at all. So when Debbie sold her business, there was 12 bookkeepers, there was a general manager, the whole thing ran without her. It was all systematized. Someone else could just take over and could project the profits pretty easily. So, and that's a really easy saleable business. And there are brokers who are good at selling a business like that. And that's how we do that. So Josh, I would go saying with skills but no experience, I feel stuck. Should I aim for the first client or work under someone else? Yeah, that's a really good question. So I would actually do both. So I would try and get a job doing bookkeeping 2 or 3 days a week, and then do whatever you can to get your clients in parallel. And what having the job 2 or 3 days a week gives you the experience, but also takes the pressure off. And we are at time. So I am going to, what am I going to do? Where am I? Oops. Going to go there, going to go there. Say thank you all so much for engaging, for listening, for understanding my accent. Wish you all the very, very best and look forward to working with some of you in pure bookkeeping. Thank you very, very much, Jordan, for having us.
Thank you.
Have a fabulous evening, and I'll go off and have a fabulous day. It's just about to hit 9 a.m. here in Australia. So my day is starting as I think most of you are winding down.
Nice. All right. Thank you very much, Peter. On behalf of everyone on the session, that was incredibly insightful. Thank you very much for sharing that. If people have got questions for you on anything that you shared, where's the best place for them to go or to potentially get in contact?
Yeah, so people can, I'll put my email is just peter@petercook.com. So people can email me there, or purebookkeeping.com is where they can go to find out about anything Pure Bookkeeping does.
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much. We are going to send out a copy of this recording as well as all of the slides that Peter was running through shortly, but now's the time to wrap up. So thank you everyone that's joined us for the bootcamp so far. Thank you for everyone that's joined us in this session. I hope that it's been valuable and that you found it useful. And we look forward to seeing you at another event soon. All right. Bye for now.